my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves and Books. I think this is going to be the last video I film in front of the Christmas decor, which is always a sad time. But I'm kind of excited for a new year in a way that I'm not usually, so that feels good. And I'm not like a goal-oriented person. I'm not somebody who writes a lot of intentions at the beginning of a new year, but I do like a fresh start. I like the idea of it. I like when your Goodreads goals starts at 0 again. I love all that stuff, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm filming this on New Year's Eve. And I'm looking forward to like reorganizing my shelves. They're definitely due for a reorganization, so that'll all happen in the new year, so that all feels great. And along with the new year comes new releases, and it's going to be really exciting. If you watch my last most anticipated books of the entire year of 2025, every single one of my favorite authors is putting out a book, which is so exciting for me personally. But there's a lot of gems coming out in January, so I want to highlight those as I do every month. And you can follow me, and I will be posting these every month throughout the entire year, as I have for the last couple of years, and it's one of my favorite videos to make. I have started to include pre-order campaigns. There aren't as many this month. I think there's only 2, so I will leave the links you need for those down below, and we'll just get into it. Starting off with January 7th, we actually have a YA romantasy debut, and it's A Language of Dragons by SF Williamson. And I know a lot of us are in the same way. If there's a dragon on the cover or in the title or in the synopsis, it's going to pique our interest, and this one sounds really, really interesting. There's also a historical element to this one. It's set in London in 1923, and apparently it's a slow burn. I love a slow burn. Enemies to lovers, you know, one of our favorite tropes. And it also says it's dark academia, which intrigues me, obviously. So Vivian is her main character, and she's a rule follower, and she just wants to start an internship. She wants to study dragon languages, which is really cool. And she just wants to protect her sister and give her sister a better life. But in the course of 24 hours, she starts a civil war somehow. So her parents are arrested, and her sister is missing, and she is offered this job as a code breaker for the war efforts. And I guess this is where the dark academia part comes in. There must be some kind of training involved with that. And of course she takes that offer, because if she succeeds at her quest that she's given, her family can come home, and if she fails, they'll die. And I'm not sure exactly where the romance comes in, but obviously it's enemies to lovers, and I'm curious to see that dynamic and the dark academia stuff as well. And obviously I hope that we get a lot of dragon stuff. A lot of times you get books that mention dragons, and there's not enough dragons for my taste. But I like the idea of the language of dragons, so I have good feelings about that one. And I think there's some special editions out there. The UK cover is absolutely gorgeous. I have to do one of my US versus UK videos for books coming out in 2025, because there's some really cool covers out there, some very different covers, so look forward to that. I think I will do that in January at some point. And then one obviously I'm looking forward to is Immortal by Sue Lynn Tan. Sue Lynn Tan obviously wrote Daughter of the Moon Goddess and that duology, and I love her. I know that series isn't for everybody, but I love it so much. And I've always said that there's so much potential in that world, and obviously Sue Lynn Tan agrees, because Immortal is a standalone fantasy within that world, so it's all set in that same world, just following different characters. And she made a point of saying that you don't have to read that at first duology to read this one. So if this one intrigues you the most, you can jump right into this, but I do like that first duology. And the tagline for this one is, "What the gods did not give us, I would take." So our main character knows that when her grandfather dies, she will have to ascend the throne and renew a pledge that her kingdom has made to the immortals who saved them from an enemy many years ago. But then she's poisoned, and her grandfather steals like an enchanted lotus in order to save her life. And the immortal queen is furious about this, and she's seeking revenge, and she sends the god of war to attack this kingdom. And then I think after that her grandfather does die, and she ascends the throne, and she's telling her people that she will not make that promise. She will not have them bound to the immortals anymore. She gets invited to the immortal realm, where she meets the god of war, and maybe they have an enemies to lovers romance. So I love what Sue Lynn Tan does with romances already, and this world is one I already am invested in. I like the idea of a romance with the god of war, so can't wait for that one. Again, some stunning, stunning editions, and this one does have a pre-order campaign. So if you're in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, or Ireland, you can enter a giveaway for pre-order campaign. I will leave the link down below. You will get a page overlay and a bookmark, and I say this all the time, I love pre-order campaigns that include page overlays. And in the US it's not a giveaway, you just have to buy from the Mysterious Galaxy bookstore or Schuler Books. So I'll leave the links to both those places down below. and you will get your bookmark and your page overlays. Obviously the bookmark and the page overlays are gorgeous because everything surrounding this whole world is stunning and I just love it. So I don't read a lot of thrillers these days, but when I do, I tend to be drawn to literary thrillers for some reason, and this one really appeals to me, and it's called All the Waters in the World by Erin Caffel. And actually a lot of this book takes place on the rooftop of the Met, obviously the popular museum in New York City, and it's like a sci-fi thriller, so that sci-fi element intrigues me even more. It makes me more likely to pick this book up than just a standard thriller. So it's years after the glaciers melt, and we're following Noni, her family, and her friends who are researchers, and they have stayed behind in New York even though it's pretty much abandoned, and they created this settlement on top of the Met, and they grow vegetables and they hunt in Central Park. I guess there's flood walls around New York, and one day a superstorm happens and the flood walls come down and they have to go up the Hudson River to try and save themselves, and they have been collecting information about everything that was at the museum and like taking notes and stuff, so they have this book with them, and we see them as they find other communities that have been created throughout the years. Some are kind of scary and not what you would expect, and just a reaction to how the world has changed, and this group of people is determined to create a new world based on their findings and everything they've collected from the museum. So I think there's a lot of potential in that. I'm always intrigued by sci-fi, but I don't read as much of it as I should. I do own a few, but keep your eye on that one because I think there's some potential there. Fonda Lee has a new YA book coming out, and it's actually by Shannon and Fonda Lee, and this is called Breath of the Dragon. Yep, another dragon book, and again there's some stunning editions of this one out there. This is actually the start of a YA duology. We love a duology on this channel, and it's based on like the findings and teachings of Bruce Lee. And if you're a lover of competitions in your fantasy, this might be one to check out. A competition happens every 6 years in this world, and the winner of this tournament is now the new protector of this magical scroll. So our main character is June, and he wants to enter this competition to restore his father's honor. I think his mother and his brothers have disappeared, and his father's telling him he should not join this tournament because he's not breathmarked, and to be breathmarked means you're born with dragon scales and blessed with special abilities. His twin had this power, but he does not. And it says he stows away in a wagon of Chang and his daughter, performers going to the capital. So he obviously defies his father, finds his way to the capital where this tournament happens, and I'm assuming he enters and wins, but who knows where the story goes from there. I just like that setup. I like Fonda Lee. I've only read Jade City. I said in 2024 I would finish that series, but I didn't. So moving on. January 14th, we have Lightfall by Ed Crocker, and this is an epic fantasy with vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. Tell me no more. No humans here, just immortals, their politics, their feuds, and their long buried secrets. So it's set in a world where vampires used to be able to roam freely, but then something called the Greys come and half the vampire population is wiped out, and the survivors have to flee to the last vampire city called the First Light, and there's some rules there. If you're poor, you can only drink weak blood. If you're nobility, you get the good stuff, and you can never leave. Following Sam, who is a palace maid, and she is tired of changing the bedpans of the nobility, and when the city's ruler's son dies, she finds evidence of who the killer is, and she decides that she's going to blackmail her way to the top, to better place in society, to better blood, and then she ends up with this rebel group of maids, and I think she has like a ragtag crew. It says she teams up with a sorcerer, a deadly werewolf assassin, and a countess. So I'm looking forward to reading about that friend group. This has been a fantasy heavy month, I'm realizing, but we do have some romance, and this one is called Flirting with Disaster by Nani Kumar, and this follows Meena, who needs to go and divorce her husband. They haven't seen each other in years. They like eloped in Vegas, and now she's like a high-powered lawyer, and she wants to marry another successful lawyer, or so she thinks. So she goes back to her small town, ends up in the middle of a hurricane, and has to hunker down with her current husband in the house that they built together, and she's starting to remember why she was so drawn to him in the first place. Like, he's got this small town charm, he's very thoughtful, he's good looking, and it's very much Sweet Home Alabama. So what can I say? It's obviously she thinks that the lawyer boyfriend is a better idea for her, but her heart belongs with this first husband. So it seems sweet. I was a Sweet Home Alabama kind of gal. I used to watch that movie all the time, so I'm here for bit of a retelling of it. I don't know if it's officially being billed as that, but definitely has that vibe. And there is a pre-order campaign for Flirting with Disaster. If you order from Blue Willow Bookshops, you will receive a signed copy and it's an exclusive print. And then a witchy YA romance, and I just love this cover. It's called Brewed with Love by Shelley Page. It obviously has cozy vibes, and we're following a teen girl whose family runs this apothecary and they're struggling. That seems like a pretty popular trope in these witchy books that I read and love. And her family hires this girl because they need the help, and she just happens to be our main character's first crush, and there's feelings there, but there's tensions as well. And then one night when the two of them are together, somebody breaks in and steals some tonics, and one of the tonics is something that our main character has been working on, and it ends up erasing one of the council members' son's memories. And I guess the sheriff wants to arrest her, so the two of them work together to see who stole from them and what is really going on here, while also trying to save the business because there's competition in town. So a lot of layers to this one. It just sounds like some of your typical witchy romance tropes, but hits for me and it sounds sweet. Next is one I know a lot of us are excited for. It's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. I know not everybody likes Grady Hendrix, but he tends to work for me. I like the campiness of his books, and this one has witches, so there's a higher chance I'm gonna like it. It is set at the Wellwood home, which is a school for unmarried girls. So pregnant teens are sent there, they had their babies, they're given up for adoption, and then they're told that they have to forget about it. And this is set in the 1970s, and we're following a young girl named Fern who arrives. She's pregnant. She meets about a dozen other girls who are there and in her same situation, and we see all of their unique scenarios. So Rose is like a hippie. She wants to run away from the home and join a commune with her baby. Zinnia is a budding musician who is convinced that she's gonna marry the baby's father when she goes back home. And Holly's barely 14. She's mute and nobody knows who the baby's father is. So one day Fern is in the library and a librarian gives her a book, and it's like an occult book, and the girls get together and they have more power than they've ever had in their lives, but with power comes sacrifice. And it says, but power can destroy and is never given freely, and the price is usually blood. So I'm curious to see what Grady Hendrix does with that. Then we have Watermoon by Samantha Soto. This is about a woman who inherits a pawn shop, but only certain people can see the pawn shop. To most people it just looks like a cozy ramen restaurant, but for those who are lost, they can see that it is this pawn shop and they can pawn their regrets. And on the first day of owning the shop, our main character has something stolen from her, and then a mysterious man comes in and says that he will work with her to find this item, and they end up on this journey. It says together they journey through a mystical world to find her father and the stolen item. So this whole thing is intriguing. This is set in Tokyo, so we will see, but it does kind of sound like it has the whimsical vibes that appeals to me. Lane Fargo wrote one of my favorite thrillers, and I feel like it's been a minute since she's released anything, or at least anything that I've heard about. And this sounds really different for her, but I'm very excited, and it's called The Favorite. It says, to the world, they were a scandal. To each other, an obsession. So this is actually like an epic love story set in the world of elite figure skating. So it follows Katarina and Heath. They meet when they are children. They have an intense connection to one another. Both have a passion for ice skating. So they have great chemistry both on and off the rink. And we see them from childhood until they're like elite ice skating champions. They're in the Olympics. During one of the Olympic events, something happens and their relationship is doomed. It comes to a sudden end. And then 10 years later, a documentary about them is being made, and Katarina doesn't want to get involved, but everybody else, like close friends and stuff, are speaking in this documentary, and she wants her voice heard. So we see the story from her eyes, and I think that it says the truth is even stranger than fiction. So very much intrigued. I know that that elite skating world can be very interesting. It's like the dance world, so different from like the dark academia that I read from Lane Fargo, but I think this will be good. Nnedi Okorafor is an author who I always put on these lists, and I don't think I've read anything from her, even though I think everything that she writes, it sounds really interesting, but this one really catches my eye. And again, there's some special editions out there, and this is called Death of the Author. So our main character is an author, and she is at her sister's wedding when she finds out that she's been dropped from her university and her book has been rejected. So that night she sits down in her hotel room and she decides to write something very different from what she's normally put out there. So she's writing like a sci-fi with androids and AI, and I'm guessing that this book kind of blows up for her. So the synopsis is very vague, that's all we get, but I'm very intrigued by it. One thing I love is sentient houses. So if I see a sentient house book, I'm gonna put it on this list, and this one is Honeysuckle and Bone by Trisha Tobias. This is being described as a YA contemporary ghost story where even paradise is haunted. This is following Karina, who just wants to escape her life, so she decides to go to her mother's homeland of Jamaica, and she becomes an au pair. And she's working for a really wealthy and powerful family. They're very kind to her, all looks well, but things quickly fall apart because it says new beginnings don't come easy because Karina isn't who she says she is, and the house already knows. Love that. Give the house a personality, some secrets. We get a lot of books where like somebody's an au pair. Doesn't always work for me, but the fact that she's hiding something and the house knows about it, oh, I'm so excited for that. So just a few more. Moving on to January 21st. The first one is Earl Crush by Alexandra Vasti, and I know this author has more Regency romances that have always appealed to me, so I need to try them. I just love the covers too. So this is actually a Regency rom-com, which I think would really work for me if I'm trying to get into Regency romances more. I think having the rom-com element is probably a good thing. And it says a reclusive Earl's life is turned upside down when a stranger shows up on his doorstep with an astonishing proposal. So it's following Lydia, and she is like a wallflower heiress, and it's kind of like Bridgerton. I think she's writing like anonymous gossip magazine kind of things, articles and stuff, and she is also a pen pal with this Earl. And one day she gets a letter from him saying that he's having financial troubles, so she decides to go to Scotland, where he's from, and make a proposal for him that they should have a marriage of convenience. But she shows up at his door and he has no idea who she is, and it turns out that his brother has been the one writing to her just using his name. But obviously there's an attraction there. He doesn't want to get married, he's a recluse, he just wants a quiet life, but he's drawn to her, and the two of them have to go on this quest to try and find this brother because he's causing trouble for them both, and it just sounds cute. Really fun. Speaking of fun, My Funny Demon Valentine by Aurora Asher. And again, some pretty editions of this. Hot pink sprayed edges, I'm here for it. So we're following the Prince of Hell, and he just wants to be a musician. He just wants to have a nice life. He's not evil, even though he's a demon. So him and his brothers escape hell. They go to Earth for some freedom, and now everybody in hell is looking for them. They're like the most wanted people on Earth. And then we follow a girl who is working at a jazz club. She's a human, but for some reason she can see that he is actually a demon. He's got some kind of curse, and I think he appears as a human, but she can see through all of that, and they have a connection. Sounds like a fun romance, a fantasy romance, kind of campy, silly. Perfect one for Valentine's Day, given that Valentine is right in the title. So cute. Think I'm gonna love that one, actually. And then finally on January 28th, we only have one book that caught my eye, but it's Out of the Woods by Hannah Bowman Young, another author who people love. I have some of her books, I just haven't read them yet. This is following high school sweethearts Sarah and Caleb, and I think we're following them 17 years after they got married. And Sarah's starting to wonder who she is outside of her marriage, and her mom passes away, and she wants to put on this fundraiser in honor of her mom, but it kind of all goes wrong, and Caleb steps in to save the day, and that infuriates her. And this situation brings up a lot of cracks in their marriage, and then the two of them spontaneously decide to go on this hiking retreat that is supposed to bring couples together, and neither of them are really that into nature. And I guess we see them bond again and their romance rekindle through that. So I know not everybody likes second chance romances, but I love the idea of it like within a marriage, and following some older couples and conversations about what can really happen in a marriage after 17 years and how you can reconnect through nature. And I think there's gonna be some shenanigans since they're nature adverse. So that just sounds cute. I've heard great things about this author in general. So a good mix there, I think, of romance and fantasy. That seems to be the main two genres. Those are the main two genres in my life. So I will leave all the information you need down below for the pre-order campaigns. I will leave my 2025 Goodreads shelf down below. I think there's 80 books on there right now. It grows every single day, and I cannot wait to see what 2025 brings in terms of new books for us. And let me know if I missed any. I know that Onyx Storm comes out in January. I haven't read Iron Flame. I'm not sure that I will, but I just like to see everybody else get hyped for it. The fact that there's like midnight releases and stuff, that brings so much nostalgia. I wish I was into that series as much as a lot of people are, but it's still so fun to see. So obviously, but I feel like if you're a fan of that series, you know that comes out at the end of January. That's the only other one I can think of that I didn't put on this list, but let me know if I missed any. I'll talk to y'all soon. See you in the new year. Bye for now.